In 1969, on a wave of social and political upheaval, the United States Senate released the Kennedy Report, detailing how national and federal policy had failed Native students in public schools and boarding schools. But despite their troubled histories, it's also suggested that Indian boarding schools could be transformed into sites of innovation and change. Innovation became the guiding principle of Jim Baker, the first Chilocco alumnus to serve as superintendent of the school in 1974.
Nowhere in Oklahoma has a year-round program ever been carried out. Chilocco was the first. This allowed some students to come in and attend classes 12 months out of the year. And if they did this beginning with their freshman year, then they could technically graduate in 3 years. The other changes that we instituted had to do with opening up our system so that students had the freedom to select a program that they maybe wanted to try, wanted to learn. And a good example of that was opening up our vocational programs to both boys and girls. It didn't matter whether it was auto mechanics. We allowed girls to enroll in auto mechanics, vocational agriculture.
Even before Baker's arrival, Chilocco's student body had been undergoing great change.
But the biggest drop was the enrollment, because by then, a lot of the tribes who had been sending their students from Arizona and Alaska and up in the Northwest were better able financially to educate them at home, and of course that's what they wanted to do. So we didn't have as many coming. Times had just changed everywhere, but mostly after I went back there, they were hardship placements. Kids that were not functioning well in the places where they were, who were in some trouble, considered relatively minor at the time, where they could have a better opportunity. But it was not the same. It was very, very different, and I was saddened when I went back. But there were some wonderful students there. They were just fewer and fewer and fewer. And of course the cost per student was just out of sight.
Back in Washington, Congress was pressuring the Bureau of Indian Affairs to make cuts in expenditures. One area being targeted was Native American boarding schools. Senator Henry Bellman from Oklahoma, a budget hawk, voiced support for closing a number of schools, including Chilocco. This upset some residents of northern Oklahoma who enjoyed the jobs and commerce the school provided. By contrast, some area farmers who saw Chilocco as a competitor supported the proposed closure.
If you have the partnership with an institution like Oklahoma State University that is helping you maybe do some testing with, let's say, wheat, it eventually gets its own name, and then you sell your wheat for $3.50 a bushel, and then the local farmer is only able to get $2.50 a bushel, then, it becomes a subject.
Rumors that Chilocco was on the chopping block were already circulating when the unfortunate death of a student in a fight propelled Chilocco into crisis. While attorneys argued whether the crime should be prosecuted in tribal or civil court, the Bureau of Indian Affairs launched an investigation. As newspapers covered the story, negative publicity added to the fears that Chilocco would be closed. Area tribal leaders, whose students benefited most from the school, added their voices to the chorus, urging the government to keep its doors open. But advocates were swimming against the tide. Public sentiment towards Indian boarding schools had shifted. One factor was increased awareness of boarding school harms. Another was the passage of the Indian Education Act of 1973. This act made the public schools a more welcoming place for Native American students by encouraging cultural programming and the hiring of more Native teachers and counselors. Finally, many Chilocco graduates, in particular, had returned to their home communities with skills to earn a good living. Unlike their parents' generation, this gave them the option to keep their children in local schools, which they themselves helped shape as educators and activists. When the official announcement came in December 1979 that the spring graduating class would be the last, many students felt betrayed. Alumni and students organized, circulating petitions, writing letters to Congress, and holding Save Our School rallies. Having existed for nearly a century, the school had grown into much more than simply a place to learn.
The campus meant so much to so many people. It was their home.
I did find a better life by going to Chilocco. I always wondered today where I might be if I didn't go there.
In May 1986, the Kaw, Tonkawa, Pawnee, Ponca, and the Otoe-Missouri nations were designated trustees of the school. Parts of the school were leased to different organizations over the years, but campus buildings, once known for their stately beauty and grandeur, declined.
Unfortunately, the Chilocco campus today is not what we had hoped it would be. And, I say this with sometimes tears in my eyes because the campus today is, it's crumbling. So when you see all of this, you ask yourself, why? What could I do? What can I do?
Restoring key buildings and maintaining the legacy of Chilocco is one goal of the Chilocco National Alumni Association, which is sustained by several chapters located in different parts of the country. The Alumni Association holds regular meetings, publishes a newsletter, and organizes the annual reunion, a tradition that began in 1894 with Chilocco's first graduating class and championed by Golden Year Superintendent Ellie Correll.
He encouraged those who were graduating to come back every year at the end of last weekend in May. We'll be here. Come back, he said, and tell us what you've been doing. That weekend was turned over to alumni activities, and it was very reassuring and inspiring in a way. You heard the stories about the guy that was, flying for the airlines, and about the one who had this good job. There were lots of distinguished Chilocco graduates.
Reunion activities have come to include the memorial walk through the arch, the powwow, veterans breakfast, and awards banquet. In 2018, for the first time, participants gathered for a ceremony at the school cemetery, where so many Native children were buried during Chilocco's early years. By and large, however, the reunion is a joyous occasion, a time for catching up with old friends and reflecting upon Chilocco.
Man, I tell you, it's helped me through life with no end.
Mm-hmm.
I can get a job anywhere I want to, just by being able to go to school here. You not only learn a little bit of one trade, you learn the tricks of the trade, a little bit about everything, how to do all kinds of work,
You come to see the place, and it stirs up old memories of this and that, and a lot of the buildings are gone or almost ruined, but memories remain just as if it were yesterday, right, or even right now. It was a huge part of my life, and whether I admit it or not, I think I was able to learn some good lessons here. I learned some skills. I learned how to deal with people in a certain way, and learned a lot about the outside world. It was a good experience. It had its bad moments, but that's life, right? I mean, not everything works out well on a daily basis, hourly basis, but good times, bad times, I tend to remember about this place just as much as the good times as bad. So it's a part of my life, so it has to be important, right?
Right.
I can't define it.
In 2006, the Chilocco campus was added to the National Register of Historic Places. The Alumni Association hopes this designation will eventually lead to the creation of a cultural center at the campus, and perhaps a museum dedicated to the Charlie Company. Since its founding, Chilocco Indian Agricultural School has been known as the Light on the Prairie. In early days, its kerosene lanterns could be seen from miles away by travelers in covered wagons adrift in a sea of darkness. In the 30s, when electricity was installed, pilots flying over the campus at night used the illuminated campus as a visual landmark. Students, faculty, or staff heading toward the school after dark were guided to their destination by a light in the water tower. Today, the lights of Chilocco still burn in the hearts of alumni as they and their descendants work to preserve their school's unique heritage.